Okay, so you guys got two handouts today. The first one is for assignment 106, which is your last assignment except for the final portfolio. So this will be it. The program of assignment 106 is exactly the same as assignment 105. You'll be making the same or a modified version of your cabin for Yosemite. It's not required that it be the same, though if you were happy with your AutoCAD one, there's no reason you can't base your 3D model on that. Today I'm going to talk about taking your AutoCAD file, bringing it in, working on top of it, and then building the 3D version of it in SketchUp. So you can go back and review the requirements, same set of requirements. In terms of what you're going to give me as part of the assignment, you're going to give me 3 collage/rendered views from SketchUp and or Photoshop, mostly Photoshop. And what we're going to do, I know it's the end of approaching the end of the semester, and everybody always gets stressed out as the end comes, and you've got all this workload that piles up on you. Probably might not feel that much like it because you just finished your Mondrian Museum, but guess what? There's a Calder one due by the end, and you'll freak out over that momentarily. So get your sleep right now, okay? Make it last. Make good sleep last for the remaining 4 weeks. So as part of this, what I try to do to recognize that you're going to be heavily involved in other studios is for this last assignment, we're going to do a lot of it in class. And if you're here and if you follow along and you work diligently for the whole time that your lab period is, there's no reason that you can't get the bulk of it done. And what we're going to essentially do is we're going to model your cabin in SketchUp. We'll start that today. And then over the course of the next several weeks, we'll spend a day doing a plan, doing a section, doing an elevation, and ultimately doing a perspective view of your cabin. So we'll take all 4 of those views. I'll teach you the techniques of collaging. You've learned a lot of the techniques already, so it's more an assembly of the stuff that you already know in terms of making it look good. There's some great examples that people have done of the Mondrian Museum and collage work and people and whatever. I was very impressed of the ones that are up on the wall. Don't know if any of those belong to you, but if they do, nice work. If not, that's what we're shooting for. So I'm going to show you kind of how to go about these as each of those 4, the plan, the section, the elevation, and the perspective. And what you'll be able to do for assignment 106 is pick 3 of those 4 to actually turn in. So you'll do all 4 and basically throw out the one that didn't turn out. And so I think that's a fair way of letting you kind of experiment with it and not have to turn all of it in. It is due the Wednesday before the final, so you have essentially the rest of the semester to do it. We will mix in addition to this SketchUp work, we'll mix in working on the portfolio because obviously that's due on the 23rd, Monday the 23rd. So it's kind of, that's creeping right up until the end. Okay? So anyway, if you have questions on that, you're more than welcome to ask me, but I like to give it out to you now so you can see where we're going with it. In terms of exercise 125 today, it's really a matter of starting with what we have created in AutoCAD, getting it into the world of SketchUp, and then drawing on top of it and working with it. Anybody ever tried to bring something from AutoCAD into SketchUp before? It kind of works. That's probably the best way of describing it. If you bring AutoCAD into Rhino, it works seamlessly, right? There's a reason I like Rhino as much as I got to start now. With a month left, I have to start plugging my next class, right? You all know that you have to take that class, right? I don't know whether you actually have to, but I think you have to. So I gotta get my plugs in early. So I gotta push Rhino a little bit. Anyway, so in the world of SketchUp, it kind of works. I'm going to show you some techniques today that I think help it to work a little bit better. So I've gone ahead and I've opened up the file that I used for my building in AutoCAD. I have the layout view showing, which really isn't going to do a whole lot for me, because this is the scaled version that you plotted. So I need to switch back into model space and have a look at my drawing here. And so it's reasonably set up. The hope is, and I learned from this morning that this is not the case for a lot of you, the hope is that we were careful when we set this up and our layers mean something, because we're going to end up deleting some of the layers because we don't really need them. So hopefully you were organized when you were working on it. If you weren't, it's no big deal. We'll get there. But the more organized you are in AutoCAD, the easier it is when it gets into the world of SketchUp. So all I have to do is save this file, and I can use it directly. For me personally, I like to do a save as. So you can either type save as, or you can click on the A in the upper left corner and go to save as. And you'll want to save this as a file to use as your export. I've already done it, so I'm not going to do a duplicate file. Once you have it, because we're using AutoCAD, the newest version, and SketchUp, the newest version, the two talk to each other, so we don't have to backward save in an old version of AutoCAD or anything like that. We can use the new version. So I'll switch over into the world of SketchUp. I have a brand new document that I've opened up using the architectural design feet and inches template. And I'll go ahead and delete the little person because we don't need her. And at this point, I'll just go to the File menu and then Import. And when I go to File Import, I just look for, and a lot of times this is something that pops up for a lot of people. They go to the folder where they have their AutoCAD file, and they say, wait a minute, it's not there. You have to change the type over here in the lower right corner to be AutoCAD files. If you don't change the type, you won't see it. So as long as it's set, you can't set, oh, there is an all supported image types, but we don't want that. We want the AutoCAD. So you have to actually specify the AutoCAD file. And you'll want to click on the AutoCAD file, and then make sure you click on Options. Whenever there's an option button, click on it. Even if you don't change any of the settings, at least you're aware of the fact that there may be some settings. So I've gone ahead and I've clicked on the Options button, and lo and behold, there's something called Scale Units. Well, the units that we used in AutoCAD were inches. So we have to make sure that my SketchUp file corresponds and is also using inches. Right? So we have to make sure that they match. So my scale units are in inches. That's perfect. I'll go ahead and say OK, and then I'll go ahead and click on the Import button. And depending on the complexity of your drawing, this can take some time, not very much time, or a lot of time. And when it's done, you'll get an Import Results dialog box. And then if we zoom out, we can see that it brought in all of my pieces. So the natural reaction, and what some of you may have done before, is, oh, okay, well, I have my plan in here. Let me go ahead and just take a rectangle, and I'm going to draw it right over my plan. Okay? And when you do that, you see that some of the surfaces fill in, some of them don't. It's kind of haphazard. So that's not actually the method that I recommend. What I would rather have you do is take some time and organize your file prior to doing any actual work in SketchUp. So what I'll do is I'll turn off all of my layers for right now. And so I'll just come over to my Layers window. If you don't see your Layers window, it should be in your default tray about halfway down, Layers. I'll expand that. And this works very similar to layers in AutoCAD or layers elsewhere, though there are a bit fewer options. Basically, we can have a current layer that's identified by the dot on the left. We have the names of the layers, and we have the ability to make them visible or invisible. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll turn everything invisible to start. Just come down my list. And once everything's invisible, the only layer that's currently on is layer 0. I'm actually going to create one new layer. So I'll add the plus sign, and I'll call that layer 3D. And I'll make that the current layer. By doing that, it saves me from having to keep one layer current and on. Now I have the ability to turn any layer on or off for right now. So at this first layer here, layer 0, the only thing that I have, it's the only visible layer, is this table and chair. Now in all reality, you're going to go to the components library. We'll talk about this, and you're going to bring in some table and chair. So we don't need to recreate this exact table and chair as part of my drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and take layer 0. And I can't delete layer 0 because it's the default layer in SketchUp. But I can take the objects themselves, and I can delete them. So I've selected those objects, and I press delete. The next one that I'll turn on is the topography layer. And so if I have the topography layer on, we can see there's all of my topography. Now to make the topography not attached to any objects, and this is kind of the key as I'm trying to separate these out, is I want to take all of the topography like this. I'll right click on, oops, sorry, my right click didn't work here. I'll right click and I'll say make group, which we've done before. and that detaches it from any of the other objects that are around it. Okay? Then I can turn off the topography layer, and I can turn on whatever the next layer is. In my case, it's cadblocks.net. Doesn't look like there's anything on that layer, so I'll click on the little minus sign to make that layer go away, and we can go ahead and delete the contents of that layer because I'm not concerned with it. Next one here, I'm also not concerned with, so we'll delete that one. Next layer here is walls. Now that's probably fairly important, and my organization structure was pretty good. I'm missing a few lines. There's a line there that I'm missing. There's a couple lines over here that I'm missing, but it's reasonable. Okay? So I could go in and fix those lines before I got too far. So let's draw that across. And I could come over here and I could draw this across there and there. And I could draw this last one across there and there. Okay? But ultimately what I'm going to want to do is select it, right-click on it, and say Make Group. So now I have a group with walls. So we'll turn that off. Oops, sorry, let me make 3D active again. Turn that off. And we'll go to the next one, which is Kitchen. Okay, well, the kitchen doesn't really matter, except that I do care about where these windows go. So maybe I will, in fact, leave parts of the kitchen, but I don't need the refrigerator. I'll delete that. I don't need the stove. I can delete that. And I'll make these windows, which happen to be on the kitchen layer, part of a group. But in the interest of being organized, let me go ahead and turn on the Windows layer and see the rest of the windows. And we'll make all of those part of the same group. So again, I don't need these that sink. I don't need these upper cabinets. We'll get rid of those. Don't need this. Don't need whatever that is. And that seems reasonable. We'll make all of these windows a group. So I'll right-click, Make Group. Turn those off. And actually, I should have changed. Let me back up a couple steps. Before I make the group, I'm going to take these that were on the kitchen layer, and I'm going to change them to be on the Windows layer. And I'll do that by selecting them and then opening up the Entity Info drawer here and changing the layer to be on Windows. So it's on the Windows layer. Okay. Now that they're all on the Windows layer, I can select them all and again right-click, Make Group. And we can go ahead and turn those objects off. And I can go ahead and delete the kitchen layer altogether. The flooring doesn't look like I have anything on the flooring, so we'll get rid of that. Text we'll get rid of. Furnishings, those are my bathroom fixtures. I'll go ahead and delete those as well. So you can see that I'm really going through and trying to control what's left. I don't think I need that roof, so we'll go ahead and delete that. As few of layers as possible is probably a good thing. So we'll get rid of this one. Guides layer, don't need my guides, we'll get rid of those. The elevations, of course, I am going to need. Though it looks like there's a few extra little pieces there. Those can go away. And for each elevation separately, I'll group that. So let me make a group here. Make a group here. Make a group here. And we'll make a group here. So all four of my elevations are grouped, so we'll leave that on. Then we get to the doors. And I actually don't really care too much about the doors because I'll end up modeling those after in SketchUp. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the doors layer. I already have the openings, which is the part that matters. And we'll delete the no print layer. And now we're down to a very clean model. So let's go ahead and turn the walls on. Make sure that that checkbox is on. And now it's going to be time to start actually creating the floors and the walls so that I can use them. Okay? And so when I do that, I want to make sure that my 3D layer is active. And I've got a variety of strategies for how to do it. I've found that as much as it is a pain to do it, most of the time the easiest strategy is to either use rectangles or the line tool and actually start to draw right on top of your plan with where you want the walls to go. So I'll just draw right on top there. I'll draw there. The other option would be to draw a big rectangle and hope that SketchUp divides it. Right? I do say hope because it doesn't always work. So for example, I could come in here and I could say, let's draw that rectangle, and maybe I'll be lucky and it will divide it. But in this case, it didn't, even though I have those lines there. Right? So it's a little bit annoying. I could draw the big rectangle like this, and I could explode this group and hope that it divided up into its individual sections. But again, it did some of them, but not all of them, which is one of the annoying parts about SketchUp. So again, my recommendation is to go through and just to manually draw. It doesn't take too long. You can choose to chase or to trace over using just the line tool around the corners of a wall, or you can build it up with little rectangles, and after you've built it up with little rectangles, you can go in and delete the parts that overlap. So there's an example of two rectangles, and I'll just delete that little curve. Likewise, I could delete this little curve and these, and it becomes one nice joined surface. That's one of the ways that SketchUp works. So let me continue here. Again with rectangles. Draw another one here. And another one right there. Draw from there. Draw from there. Draw there. And again, I'll go around and I'll clean this up. Though you guys don't really have to sit and watch me clean up the drawing. Okay, so once I have all of my walls, at that point it becomes a matter of extruding the walls. Okay, so I can go ahead and I can turn off my walls layer, and I'll end up with just the walls that are left. Obviously, I'm missing a few, so I should spend a little bit more time. Let me do this wall here real fast. There we go. So I have that wall. Oh, missing a few more over on this side. And let's check. All right, so I'm doing pretty well now. I have essentially my walls. And now it's going to be time to extrude those walls up into the third dimension. Okay? Obviously I designed this building, so I could just use the push-pull tool and I could say, oh, this wall needs to be 12 feet tall, for example, and I can draw it that way. But sometimes it's easier to reference the elevations that you've already created. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So my floor level right now is right here on the ground plane. So when I rotate this up into the third dimension, I need to know where the ground plane is so that the ground plane ends up staying on the ground plane. And so I have it drawn here as part of this stair. This is the ground. So when I do a rotation, I want to rotate around that line. So for me, whenever I try to do a rotation in SketchUp, the easiest thing is to create a little box to help you rotate, and then you can delete it after the fact. So I'm just going to draw a little box. It doesn't matter how accurate it is or what size it is. And I'll make it come out like that. And now I can rotate using that box. So I've selected everything including the box. And I'll come up to the rotate tool here. And I'll set my rotation. And the way SketchUp's rotation tool works is it really likes to have a face to snap to, which is part of why the box is great. Because once you have the box, it's easy to get to the face that you want. So in this case, it's the green face. And I'm going to go from this axis up to the blue axis right there. And once I've done that, this is now, and I could actually get rid of this box. I don't need it anymore. This is now lined up so that the ground plane right there matches up. You guys see how that works? Okay. So now if I were extruding, and I could actually take this and move it closer so that it wasn't quite so far away. Once I do that, I can take the extrusion of, say, this piece here, right there, and when I use the push-pull tool, I can snap it. Come on, zoom out for me. Almost there. Almost there. Oh, there we go. All right. So when I use the push-pull tool, I can choose to snap it to the relating point on the elevation. So I know that this wall needs to be that tall, for example. And this wall here, oops, wrong wall. This wall here needs to be that tall as well. So we'll push-pull till it matches up with that. So you can see how I'm using this elevation as a guide. Okay, this side over here also needs to be moved. Select it first. There we go. I already have this wall, so I don't have to zoom all the way out. And I can use push-pull, and I can drag that one across as well. So you guys can see how I'm using that elevation as a reference point for my 3D modeling. Okay, same thing here with this one. If I create a box, again, this stair is on ground level. So if I create the box and I extrude the box, there we go. I can use that as my rotation. Oops. So let me select it. I'll go to rotate. And I'm going to rotate from there to there and snap to that blue axis right there. I can delete that little square, and then once again I can move this object backward. Again, it has to be along the green axis this time, so it's a little bit closer. And I can use this to help me. So I could use, say, this wall right here needs to extrude up to there. So I'll use the push-pull, and we'll drag that one till it meets there. So again, I'm using those building elevations to help me do this. So now that I have that, we can move this one up. So we'll push-pull on this till it's right there. Let me clean up this by getting rid of that little line. And we'll get rid of this little line. And we can push-pull this object until it meets there. So I'll continue extruding those walls. Obviously, once I get the walls extruded, I'm still going to have to fill some pieces in. So for example, I still need a top to my door. Oops. So let me use my rectangle tool, and I'll put a top across. Now in this case, I'm going to push-pull the opposite direction. So if this goes down that way, I can fill it in. Sometimes SketchUp has issues with the direction that you're pulling. And you saw that briefly when I went underneath. It wanted to go the opposite direction. If that's the case, we can flip the faces afterward, or instead of drawing it there, I could go down a certain distance first. So in this instance, my door is probably down at the 8-foot level. I forget what the distance was here. Bear with me for just a second. Actually, you know what? I have the door height right there. So let me rotate this into its view. So we'll go ahead and do a box. And we will push-pull that box up there. And we'll rotate all of this. from there to right there. We can get rid of the box. And now I can reference my door height to that particular point. So let me measure the height from the top down. I'll use the little tape measure tool, and I'm going to measure from there down to the door, and I end up with 5'4". So I'll come back over here. I'll go down 5 feet 4 inches. I'll draw across. There. Oops. That was too low. My mistake. Go from there to there, into there. Fills in my shape. Then I can use the push-pull and pull this up to be even with the top. Okay? But since this is all one continuous wall, I don't need these little dividing lines, so I can actually delete that line and delete that line. And as long as the surfaces are coplanar, they'll join together and provide one whole set of walls. Okay? Likewise, I can do the same thing over on this side. I'll select the wall here. I'll use the push-pull tool, and I'll drag this up. And I'll do the same thing. I can actually just draw straight across. Go to there, to there, and to there. Push-pull. Wrong object. Right to there. And then we'll clean it up by deleting these extra little lines so that it becomes one continuous wall like that. Does that make sense for how I went about doing that? Okay. So then you'll continue on. If you have your roofs, you can use the roofs on either side to pull across and start to intersect faces that way. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn you guys loose to model. And then if you guys have questions or something that seems relevant to everybody, I'll come back and I'll show you that piece of it as well. Are there any questions before I start? No? All right.
I lost you with the layering.
I'll help you.